So, welcome to our video series celebrating Women's History Month. My name is Samanda Jean. I am the marketing manager at MassBio, an organization dedicated to advancing the Massachusetts leadership in life sciences.
And I'm Lennon, founder and CEO of Thinkubator Media, an organization dedicated to elevating the profiles of women in STEM. All this month, we'll be introducing you to formidable women in STEM who are leading the way in their industry.
Thank you, Lori. Today, we're welcoming Jessica Ortiz, program manager at Boston Medical Center, Shannyn Smith at the Capitol Boutique, and Shelbe Jonson, a chemical engineering student at MIT.
A career in STEM can take many different paths. In this episode, we'll be discussing careers in STEM and the pathways our guests took to follow their passions. But to start things off, we'd love to have all of you introduce yourselves. We'll start with Shelbe. Take it away. We'd love to hear more about you.
Absolutely. Well, hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here. I'm a first-year PhD student in the MIT Chemical Engineering Department, and I'm a graduate research fellow in Dr. Brandon Dukoski's lab in the Reagan Institute of Mass General, MIT and Harvard, where we are doing immune engineering research to help cure human disease.
Great. Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Ortiz. I am a program manager at Boston Medical Center. I've been working at BMC for over 10 years. I love the community work that I do, specifically with the Black and Latin community. Reaching out to all the communities in need is, as I say, is hard work, not hard work. So thank you for having me here.
Great. And Shannyn.
Pleasure to be on the panel. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Shannyn. I'm the founder of the Capitol Boutique, which is a collective of female founders of STEM startups and women investors throughout the US as a way to increase access to capital. In my background in STEM, I have an undergrad in biology from Harvard, and I went to the MIT SLO program, which is where I founded the boutique. Pleasure.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us. It's great to have all of you here. Great. Samanda, do you want to kick it off with the questions?
Yes. So let's start with one that I'm actually very excited about asking. So many of you guys probably, when you were younger, had dreams of being maybe a princess or a policeman or woman. Yeah, a policewoman. Did you ever think in the future years that you would be where you are, that you would be in STEM? And how did you get into that journey?
I don't mind starting. So I'd say yes, absolutely. When I was 8 years old, I dressed up as a pediatrician. So I had a Cabbage Patch doll and a white jacket, which was probably my mother's blouse. So always wanted to be a doctor. And I think that curiosity in math and science came because my mother, who's a teacher, encouraged us and put us in different classes. And I remember taking chemistry class on Saturdays at the Long Island University. So I grew up in Southampton, New York, on the Shinnecock Indian Reservation. And every Saturday, my brother and I were in chemistry class. So it really started with my mom, and always I wanted to be in the sciences, science and math.
That is amazing. I was just telling before you got on, I took an AP bio class, and I think afterwards I was like, no, this is enough. We don't need to do
this. Well, and I also appreciate the Cabbage Patch doll reference. It's nice to know that they're still at our psyche.
I wish I still had them. I feel like they would be worth something now.
Yeah. I have a redheaded gymnast on some shelf somewhere in my home. So Jessica, we'd love to hear your STEM story.
Yes. So born in Puerto Rico, I was raised in Boston, youngest of four. Both of my parents, high school dropouts. None of my siblings went to college. Growing up in Boston, I seen the struggle my family went through being here. Ignorantly, I will say my parents didn't know the system quite well in the States. Very different back home. You can make it without a degree. Most of my family have like beachfront houses, 2-3 cars, but again, it's not the same way here. And they came with that mentality to the States. And when I was growing up, I just seen how much they had to struggle to try to make it here. And I just decided once I finished high school that I wanted to pursue and do something with my life. I didn't know quite yet what it was. At the age of 16, let's bring it back. At the age of 14, I got a internal bleeding and I was in the ICU for 2 weeks. The doctors didn't think I was going to make it. I had about 6 IVs in me. There was just running fluids. And I looked at myself very, very ill. Just seeing how the doctors and the nurses was working with me inspired me. So at 18, I graduated high school, became a medical assistant right away because I wanted to get into the hospitals immediately. And I didn't want to wait years. So I got in. I was working at Boston Children's Hospital. Then I moved on to Beth Israel. At that time, I graduated from Roxbury Community College with my associates in bio. Don't ask me how I did it. I did it. I said, okay, so this is what I'm graduating with. Sure, no problem. I went to work at Beth Israel. And at the time, that was when the Boston Marathon bombing happened. So I was working directly with those patients, which was an amazing experience. Once that kind of died down, I transferred over to Mass General. At the time, I graduated from UMass Boston with my exercise and sports science bachelor's. And then I moved on to Boston Medical Center, which I've been there for about 10 years. My manager was amazing. And she said, Jessica, I really do think you should go to nursing. And I said, sure, let's give it a try. So I went to Mass General IHP and I got my second bachelor's in 12 months. The craziest thing I have ever done in my entire life. I did a 4-year program in 12 months. I thought, this is the end of me. I'm not going to make it. But I made it. And I've been working at BMC, a very diverse community, population, staff, and I absolutely love it. I knew that I wanted to do something within the hospital, just didn't know what. So now that I'm involved with the community, I decided now to go back and get my master's in health management to be able to help out, the next person of my kind, only because I know what it takes to go through school without no educational background. It could be done. You just need some guidance. And I'm proud to say that I was able to make it this far. And I'm just willing to work with the next person who needs the assistance as well.
That's incredible. And we hear that a lot too. It's like, that the support system matters. The support system matters. And, just having the encouragement and someone to kind of help share resources. So it's really wonderful that you want to be that for other people. And it sounds like you had some of it, from your journey, but a lot of it was self-motivated as well.
Yes.
Wow. All right, Shelbe, tell us your STEM story.
Absolutely. So it's actually funny, for most of my life up until like middle high school, I wanted to be a lawyer. I really had a passion for like social justice and politics. My mom's a journalist, and a lot of her beat was basically that, a lot of social justice. My family's from the Caribbean, so she did a lot of coverage of the Caribbean and the political unrest there. And so I always saw myself being a lawyer, and I like to argue, and I thought that's like all lawyers did. So I was like, let's go for it. But then when I started getting to high school, I realized I liked history, but I didn't love just like reading a lot of stuff all the time. And then I learned more. That's kind of what law school is. And so I started having not really a crisis, but I just realized that maybe that's not what I could see myself doing for the rest of my life. And then my mom, she was kind of like, well, you seem to be really passionate about math and science. Maybe you should consider that. Also, at the time, I was going to a predominantly white high school in the South. And so that was kind of a like difficult time in terms of like my racial identity, growing up, being pretty young, end of middle school, beginning of high school at that time. And my first Black teacher at that school was my science teacher. And he was like the smartest person I had ever met, Mr. Ed Times. He was so smart and he explained biology so well. And I absolutely loved that class. And so that's kind of what got me thinking more of a STEM career versus like law. And eventually I stumbled upon engineering, talking to one of my uncles about it, who is an engineer. And eventually through a series of events, including losing a teacher to cancer and some other stuff, I realized that I wanted to do engineering, but in the health space, looking to solve so many problems that we have in terms of doctors just not having the tools that they need to be able to help people and treat people and solve issues. So I knew I couldn't be a doctor because I'm super squeamish, but I knew that going into chemical engineering and eventually doing more bioengineering research, I would be able to make the tools to help doctors do what they need to do every day.
Very cool. So I guess that leads me to the next question, right? Like you have this STEM journey and you're continuing on this path, right? So, how do you continue to stay curious? How do you want to continue innovating? And how has that brought you to where you are right now? Maybe we start with you, Shannyn, since
Sure. I would say there's fearlessness. So not being afraid to try something new or learn a new skill. And as I think back to my career, I think that's held true. So I thought, so dressing up as a pediatrician, I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. I was pre-med at Harvard. And when I graduated, I realized, and I did a year at New York Hospital, so doing clinical research. And I realized I didn't want to be a doctor and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And at Harvard, it was, investment banking, lawyer, or doctor. And I had not a clue. And I just started to research jobs, not careers, but jobs, because I need a paycheck and health insurance. And I wound up in advertising, but I was in the scientific and medical strategy teams of advertising. And it was really cool to be able to work with pharma companies like Bristol Myers Squibb and Novartis and Bayer. And I developed a career that focused in oncology and some rare disease, and launching first-in-class products in partnership with big pharma, and then started to work with some biotechs in Boston. And after about a little over 15 years in Manhattan, working in advertising, both in large agencies and smaller agencies, I pivoted. And so here I built this career, knew what I was doing, but pivoted into industry. And I remember interviewing, it was rough interviewing, because I was told that the experience and all of the professional knowledge that I had gained in New York actually didn't translate. And so that was tough, but I wanted to try something different. So I'd say adjacent, but different. So I think that fearlessness is what is required in order to make the pivots or do something different and not be afraid of what other people think. And I pivoted into industry and was at Shire, which was acquired by Takeda, and then moved into biotech. And so I've also gone from being more of I'd say medical or scientific storyteller to marketing, to now more operations. So working within biotech in Boston in more operations roles. So whether it's preparing a company like Oncopeptides and multiple myeloma for launch as an organization, to leading the IPO readiness at Exilio Therapeutics, also in oncology. So I think it's the fearlessness. So I guess, and that I think is part of innovating your career. So you're never stagnant.
Did the fearlessness help you launch the Capital Boutique?
Not fearlessness. It was more indignation, because I thought, how appalling is it that women lag male founders in venture financing? The stats, 2%, and even less for women of color. And I thought, someone has to do something about this. So as Shelbe was saying, this social justice, I wouldn't say it's fearlessness, because fearlessness would be me working on the Capital Boutique full time. I'm not quite there yet, not that fearless yet, but being able to do it as a passion project. And I was in San Diego on Wednesday. So my first corporate partner has been Johnson & Johnson J Labs in San Diego. And we did an event that brought together the women in life science and tech in the San Diego community. And they were really receptive and excited to get together, and they didn't know one another. And I thought, in a community that's so specific, you would think that the women would know one another, but they didn't. And then they said, can we do this every month? I said, well, I'm from Boston, but I'm sure there are some folks in San Diego who'd be able to support and continue that excitement.
Very cool. All right, Jessica, how about yourself? How do you stay innovative? How do you stay curious?
Innovated. Funny story. I got an email last week from the company TED Talk. And I'm on the second phase, still haven't gotten an official invitation, but on May 27th, I I proposed my video. I had to show them what will be my talk in 2 to 3 minutes, which was ridiculous. I probably recorded over 40 times. But it comes down to breaking the cycle, breaking the negative cycle. Working at a hospital and being the only Latina in the emergency room was an eye-opener for me. It just showed that it's unfortunate not a lot of, and I'll speak on behalf of my community, it's unfortunate that not a lot of Latina has the opportunity and the chance to achieve these goals. Some say it just seems too far-fetched. And I can say that I might have said the same thing when I was younger. Not seeing that in my own household and not having someone to look up to, it was hard to actually put myself in this dream of becoming someone. And as I was growing up and I got connected with more and more people, I said, oh, okay, I can do it too. All right, so let's get it going. So I started looking into how can I make myself be that person that everyone else is talking about, but it doesn't see me. One of my meetings that I had over Zoom, I was going to have a meeting with one of the directors of New England for the Boys and Girls Club for one of our collaborations. And he's a Black male. All we did was exchange emails and going back and forth. And then it was time for us to meet in Zoom. And I will never forget, he says that he was surprised that I was the one that showed up in the Zoom call. And I asked him, I said, why is that? And he says, I honestly thought I was going to be a white woman in your level of, work with the hospital. And it just shows. And I said, well, it's not, it's me. And I just little things like that. It just shows that not a lot of us have the opportunity. And I want to break that cycle, that negative cycle. Growing up, it was college and university, owning a home, being, a professional. It seemed as a privilege, not as a normality. And one day I was working in the ER and I was speaking to one of my colleagues and she wanted to know how to get into school. And I was giving her the ropes around it, what not to do, what to do. And someone stopped me because they overheard me say that I have 3 degrees. And she was very surprised to hear it. You have 3 degrees? And it kind of hurt. It bothered a little because you're already, judging. Latina should not have 3 degrees. And I just looked at her and I said, I do have 3 degrees. And it's unfortunate that, this is the world that we still live in, but I feel great and I feel more empowered to be able to show the next generation that, it is possible. And in this opportunity, we all have it equally across the board, no matter what background you have. So I say it proud every day I go. None of my family members, out of my 47 cousins, I'm the only one that went to school. So I don't want people to look at me as Jessica with the 3 degrees. No, I come from Dorchester. I grew up in the projects and I made it happen. And I will never forget where I came from because the struggle did not break me, it made me. And that's how I still innovated into the community. My job, anything to stay curious, I just want to keep going. That's my adrenaline. Every 2 years, I can say that I graduated from college, 14, 16, 17, and now I'm going for my master's. I just kept going only because I want to help. Bottom line, I just want to help the next person.
Yeah. And Jessica, before we started recording too, you were talking about another way that you do innovate where, especially when you were talking about the work you did over the pandemic. Do you think you could share a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. During the pandemic, I graduated from my nursing school and immediately it was hands on deck. Everyone did not know what to expect. Whatever came through that door, we automatically thought it was COVID. And unfortunate, it was most of them that was COVID. So working in the ER there for about 2 years, it was an eye opener that we were really in a crisis. And as time moved on, I was asked to become like one of the leaders in the community to help the Black and the Latino community to get vaccinated. So my job transitioned from more hands-on to more outreach work. And I said yes. So I decided to be part of this COVID mobile team. And then from there, I was the program coordinator. And then I got promoted to program manager. I was so well connected with the city. And between the years of 2021 and through 2022, I was able to put between 750, 850 clinics. And within that clinic, we were able to vaccinate over 17,000 Black and Latin people with the COVID-19 vaccine. And to me, it was just such an amazing experience to be able to provide this necessity to the community and to be able to see the patient's eyes lit up that their provider looks like them and understands. And I was able to communicate in their language. Maybe they were afraid to get the vaccine because all they heard was English negative thoughts about it. But I was able to communicate with my parents. My parents were against the vaccine until I explained it to them, in their own language. Like, this is what's going on, and this is what's going to happen if you don't get vaccinated. And I was so fortunate to be able to be the one to vaccinate my mom and my dad. And that continued on. And it was just such a great thing to have in the community.
Wow. That's incredible, Jessica. Thank you so much for all you do. Seriously, you got 17,000 people vaccinated over the pandemic. That's incredible. So thank you. Shelbe, do you want to share what makes you innovative, keeps you curious, how you innovate?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll answer this in two parts. I'll say on one hand, I think in the academic environment or research institute, it's almost easy to, I would say stay curious and innovative because you're constantly around people coming up with all kind of like new ideas and trying new things every day. The postdoc will come up to me and be like, I had this new idea. Like, I just ordered the materials to do it. We're going to try it tomorrow. So that's constantly what you're around. And so that's, I think, really what has been helping me recently. I have to read papers. I'm in a class right now where I have to read 2 new papers a week and write a discussion about it, looking at like cutting edge research in protein engineering. And so being around that, I feel like definitely helps. I think though, what can be very dangerous though in academia, and especially when you're working on a PhD or you're in a lab, it can become very easy to become pigeonholed into what you're doing and to not get curious or innovative about the things outside of your field. So even here at the Reagan, I'm doing immune engineering research. And specifically the motto of the Reagan is harnessing the power of the immune system to cure human disease. But there's a lot of people around the country and around the world looking to solve that problem in different ways, not looking at the human immune system, right? Like right now, most of the drugs are small molecule drugs. That's not using our immune system, antibodies, et cetera. And so it can be really easy to, when you're in it and you really believe in your research, to just be like, well, my way is the only way. So once I figure this out, the world will be saved. But in reality, it takes all of us working together to solve these problems. And so it's important to stay up to date and curious and innovative, looking at things outside your field, right? Networking at conferences where not everybody is working on the issues the same way you are. And I think by doing that, it really helps you to stay curious in a more broad way. And I think that's the ways that we'll really be able to solve these issues more quickly and make serious progress.
So I have a slightly controversial question for you. So as a young person, do you feel, so I had an old boss, and he would always say that he loved working with young people because they had new and fresh minds and weren't part of the system for a long time. So he saw that they really had a capacity to innovate in different ways than somebody who may have been in the discipline for decades. Do you feel that to be the case, or is it different? I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. I think there's a lot of, what's the word? Power in working with older individuals, right? So like, I'm brand new to the lab. I'm a first year PhD student. I just graduated from undergrad in July. So I'm literally brand new. And so many of my postdocs, I'm spending a lot of time learning from them right now, right? Like, they're much older than me, or I wouldn't say much, but they are older than me. But they have so much knowledge, right? They've been in the lab for multiple years, and I always ask them a ton of questions all the time, right? So there's a space for that. At the same time, you're right. Whenever you're coming to a problem with fresh eyes, you just look at it in a totally different way, right? Even our lab, what I really appreciate about the DeCoste lab is that all of us come from very different fields. So some of them are pharmacists, we have pharmaceutical engineers, we have chemical engineers, we have computer scientists. And so all of us are coming together, looking at these issues from totally different sets of eyes, working on the same things, but we all see it in a different way, right? So as a chemical engineer, the classes I've taken and the way I've been taught to think is very different than the way that a pharmacist might have been taught to think. But we can both bring together really cool ideas, right? I think even coming from different backgrounds, right? So I'm Black, my family's from the Caribbean, right? That's very different. Our lab is very international. I've been in America my whole life. Many of them are from Chile, the UK, Brazil, right? Even that. So I think definitely that it's the same with age, right? Coming as a new person to the field is going to be totally different than a PI, a principal investigator, who has been in the field for 50 years and might really be convinced this is the way we're going to solve it, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing. I would say from what I've heard from everybody is this idea of diversity in the fields that you are in, whether it is a lack of diversity or a combination of diversity. And I don't mean it by just like race or gender, even the age and background. One of the things that I would say is it is important for us now, say from Ray and Lori, that we have these discussions to show people that you can do something innovative when you have multiple people of multiple facets in your lab or in your rooms, just because you're not thinking of the things that are outside of your purview. Like you have such a narrow mind when you're thinking about the world, and somebody else could have such a different experience that just drives innovation in the life sciences, which gets me super excited because we need that. Like we need the innovation.